I just thought to myself, I can't do this anymore. I do not have the energy to go through another contraction and push this child out. And just at that very moment, I just felt this peace come over me. And it was like my spirit was starting to leave my body. There was no pain. It was just this delightful, delightful energy.
Today's guest is Jane Dawson.
Hi.
Good morning, Jane.
Good morning.
Good morning from the US.
Good afternoon from Scotland, UK. I hope all your listeners can understand the accent, Tyler, because I do find some of my US friends struggle a little bit with it.
I think we'll be all right.
Cool. I'll speak slowly and clearly if I can.
You had an NDE giving birth. Can you tell us what life was like leading up to that?
Yeah. Well, Tyler, to be honest, I have not been the happiest of people pretty much since I was a small child. And I've thought about this, why this could be so often, and I've come to the conclusion that my mother, I was the first child for my mother and father and the grandparents. And then 16 months after me, my sister was born. And about 16 months after that, my twin brothers were born. So I feel like I went from being the princess, only child, to go and sit in the corner, there's other children to deal with. So I feel as if my crown slipped and I felt like I was unimportant. I realise now that my mother was horribly harassed and couldn't cope. But of course, with a sensitive child's brain, you just feel like rejected. And then I also felt as a child that I didn't have friends and I was different and I was strange. And I spent a lot of time on my own, not because I wanted to, but because that's the way my life was. For many years, I had read that sensitive people can be like that, people who go on to have spiritual experiences or who are intuitive or mediumistic. But I also know now that it's connected with being neurodivergent as well, which I suspect I may be on that spectrum somewhere. Neurodivergent people are naturally very sensitive stroke spiritual. And I don't know if many people know that yet, but it's very interesting with the younger generation coming up. Anyway, so I developed this lack of self-love that really turned into self-loathing and self-hate. And I feel so sad and sorry for my younger self. And I was like this really into my 40s. The NDE during my child's birth did start to change that, but for many years after that, I was still healing. So when you are in a state of self-loathing, you can only attract people who also don't love themselves. If you know anything about law of attraction, these are facts you can only put out. Get back the vibe you're putting out. And so what happened then was I got myself involved in a number of relationships that were totally unsuitable. Some of the men were alcoholics, gamblers, all this kind of thing. One man was married, I'll be honest, but I was so happy to have a man pay attention to me that I just snatched them, just snatched these unsuitable men. And then I had children with them very quickly. And so that happened to me on a number of occasions. Same with my choice of work, because I did not have the feeling that I was worthy or capable. I really was always interested in human minds, but I found myself working for the government in a really, really boring job where I was like a round peg in a square hole. And of course, that was also very stressful. So yeah, I remember the age of 18, I had got married. Can you believe that? Married at the age of 18 to a totally unsuitable man. And I was stood in the middle of our kitchen and this feeling of dread came over me, like, if this is all there is, I'm done. So I know that was my first feeling of real, what you would call depression. So yeah, I had, unknown to me, I mean, I didn't know I was depressed at that time. I just thought I had a bit of stress in my life, stroke a lot of stress in my life. And that was pretty much my life. Then I started having health issues. I had stomach problems, I developed a heart problem, high blood pressure, a disastrous thing happened to my eye. So I was just going down and down and down in my life. And I truly believe, Tyler, that if I had not discovered the spiritual path and the path of self-love, I would not be here in the physical today. So that's how it went. And just before I had the NDE, I was in a relationship with a man who had never had children before, or brothers or sisters, or who'd never been with, like, quote, a strong woman. And of course, I was running a family, had built my own house. I was doing a degree course. I was working a full-time job. And again, it was a case of, oh, there's a man that's interested. Quickly, let me grab him to me before he gets away. Very soon when we started living together, I knew it was completely wrong. He had a lot of mental health issues, and he was completely, he found issues with my pre-teenage daughters just insurmountable, and he had OCD. Of course, then I was pregnant. So things did not get much better then. And at that point, my father took cancer for the second time, stage lung cancer. So that was all the mix that was going on. I can take myself right back to it now, Tyler, and I just thought it was so much. Does that give you an idea of what my life was like before that?
It's perfect, and let's lead us into it.
It was perfectly awful. I've always had an entrepreneurial streak as well, so I've also had a natural leadership in my nature. So I was adding a lot of other stress onto myself and pressure by doing things that involve, taking on a lot of responsibility. So then I discovered I was pregnant with my son, just newly pregnant, and we heard that my dad had lung cancer for the second time, and this was going to be terminal. This time he already had half a lung removed. And when I spoke to my father, he was so upset that he said that he couldn't breathe, he couldn't lie down to sleep. His lungs were full of fluid and he felt like he was drowning, and his own body was drowning him. And my father was a big man. He was 6'2". He was an ex-Glasgow policeman and a publican. And this man, my dad, was crying in front of me, and I couldn't bear it, Tyler. And, I asked the doctor, is there anything you can do for my dad? And there's like, absolutely nothing. Any drugs we give him will make the situation worse. So there was a man at my work, and I was working for the government at this time, and I discovered that he was doing this newfangled thing called Reiki. So I guess you'll know what Reiki is. I think the whole world knows what Reiki is now, Tyler, right? And I said,
Can you explain for those who don't?
Yeah, sure. It's a form of energy healing that has a Japanese, a Mr. Usui, we believe, was the founder, and he this healing system that involves various practices and a lot of symbols. Now, I don't have a good memory, so I can't remember most of the symbols. It's funny because I'm actually doing one in front of you now, which has come to my mind, but it's hugely effective. Any form of healing is actually hugely effective. Of course, I did not know that then because I was basically like a spiritual virgin then, so I didn't have any beliefs. When I was 10 years old, I was obsessed by what happened when we die, and I actually went to a spiritualist church, because I was basically born an adult, like so many other spiritual people. And I went in there, I was probably about this high, and I probably looked about 16. And I don't know what I was expecting to see, but it was a smoky, dark hall with an old man in a grey suit on. So that definitely did not fill my requirements of what happened after we died, but it had been in my mind, although I hadn't done anything or thought about it much since then. So back to the Reiki story, I went and I asked this gentleman, would you teach me Reiki? He says, yeah, I'm running a workshop. So went along to his house, and you have to be induced into Reiki. There's a ceremony performed. At this stage, I was about 10 weeks pregnant. And while this man was doing this ceremony in me, I could feel this tiny fetus actually moving inside me. And that shouldn't have happened for weeks. And I'm like, wow, this is powerful stuff. So I went back and I said to my dad, I've been learning this Reiki thing. Would you let me do it on you? And he says, anything if it's going to help. So he was sat in a chair where he really spent his whole life basically. And I put my hands on his shoulders and I asked for the Reiki to come down, and after about 5 minutes my father went so quiet, and I'm like, God, what's happened here? I was actually scared to look and see, but I popped my head round the front of the chair. He was fast asleep. Now my father couldn't sleep. That was the reason why I had learned the Reiki in my mind, to heal him. But way back then, I didn't realise that healing was much more than physical healing. I don't know, do you know much about healing, Tyler, or do we think that your listeners know much about healing? Okay, so basically, if you accept the premise that we're all spiritual beings and that we're part of all that is, and that would be include, if you want to call the great energy God or the creator, all that is, whatever. And so we're all part of that energy. So that energy has the ability to heal anything, any human, any animal, in whatever ways are required. And that can be just by upliftment, it can be by helping someone to sleep, or it can be a complete miraculous cure, which I've also had since that near-death experience. So, but in that day I thought, right, my dad's going to get better and that'll be it. But that wasn't the case. Unfortunately, his condition did reach its end. And just before that, I got the phone call to come along to the hospital. So by this time, I was like 6 months pregnant. So my bump and I went along, and the family were all sat round my dad's bed. And I could see that he was unconscious. And that much I was going like this. And I'm like, oh dear God, my father's going to die. It was such a shock, although we knew it was coming. So I hadn't told him that I was having a boy, because again then I thought that they would never know, he'll never meet him. Little knowing that as soon as he returned to spirit, him and my son would totally know each other. And not only that, there would be an arrangement for part of his energy to be rebirthed with my son, but I found that out much later. So I held my dad's hand and I whispered in his ear, Dad, I love you so much. I'm having a boy and I want you to always look after him. And within an hour, my father had passed. So that was an incredibly difficult time. My mother lived in the house next door. She was a very grieving widow. They'd been married for 46 years. I was very pregnant. My relationship was falling apart. I know myself, I was super, super depressed. I couldn't eat anything at all. And it was just, what should have been a lovely, happy time was in fact a very bleak time. But now I know, of course, that before every birth or rebirth, there comes a hard labour. And that's where I'm going next with this story, because 3 months after my father died, there I am in the same hospital attempting to give birth to my son. Now, I was 39 at this time. I was an elderly mom, but I'd had 2 children before. And I thought I knew what my body was doing. So the anaesthetist came and asked me if I wanted a spinal block, and I said, no, I'm going to have the baby now. And you know what? I didn't have the baby, and the anaesthetist would not come back because of resources in the hospital. So soon I was gripped in the most awful contractions. If a woman has had a child, a baby without pain relief, it's quite something, Tyler. It's quite something. And because I was so mentally and physically exhausted, and in that energy was my lovely dad. I could not believe it. And I remember I said out, like, my dad's here. They're like, where? I goes, here, everywhere. And, I had not been thinking about him. It was the last thing I was thinking about. My thought was, I want to die, mixed with, get this baby out of me now. So, meeting my dad's energy like that and feeling the love and feeling the assurance from him, everything's okay, because there weren't words. This was a soul-to-soul meeting, and I know this is what it's like once we pass, once we die. I know this is what it's like. There's no bodies, there's no communication as per words, because everything is knowingness. Some people call it telepathy, but it's not even telepathy, it's a knowingness between souls. So that lasted a few minutes, and I was just bathed in the love. And then I came back into my body, and my baby was born just within a few minutes after that. But I was so blissed out by that experience. I was just lying there, and the medical staff were saying, take your baby, and I'm just like, no. I was still on another planet, completely on another planet. Well, planet the spirit world, or the other realms as I like to call it. If you think of planet Earth as the physical realms, and they could be the other non-physical realms. The name for that's heaven, the spirit world, they all sort of mean the same thing. So once I got over the birth, and came home, I was breastfeeding my giant son all day, every day. And the only, my son's 24, and 24 years ago, certainly in the UK, there was no talk of angels, crystals, mediums, no. There was nothing like that on terrestrial TV. And that's how quickly the spiritual side of life has developed now over the last 2.5 decades, really. So there was this medium called John Edwards, and he was on Sky. You might have heard of him. He's quite a well-known medium. Anyway, I'm sitting feeding this baby, and John Edwards is saying, your loved ones haven't gone, they'll give you a sign. And I'm like, okay. The next thing I would get the sign that he said. I'm like, what is going on here? So things started disappearing out the house. Like my partner at the time, he was very OCD and he'd all his clothes hung up in the wardrobe. And a certain t-shirt that he loved disappeared. And we had a big hunt all over the house and everyone was asked, have you touched it? No. A month later, there it was, back there. Coins would appear in my shoes. An amazing thing that happened was the whole family was assembled in the living room, including my mum. And this beautiful smell of flowers filled the whole of my house with no flowers and no perfume. And as soon as it was acknowledged by everyone, it went just like that. My father was doing amazing things. He was following up my experience with him in spirit by doing things on the physical, on planet Earth, to prove that he was still around. And one of the most remarkable things he did was I had my little baby sat in his chair, his car seat at the time, and I was in the house on my own with my baby, and I went through to make a cup of tea. I came back to the lounge. This baby had been moved round in his little seat, and I know it was my dad coming to have a look. So lots and lots of things like that have been happening since. But what I didn't know, well, I've learnt so much obviously, but I didn't realise that from my father's perspective in the non-physical realms, he could see all these different paths that I could walk, and that I wasn't going to be a bored and sick woman and civil servant all my life. There was something much, much fuller, much more, I don't want to say important, but more uplifting for planet Earth for me to do, and that he was going to walk that path with me. And that is just the start of my amazing spiritual and self-love journey.
Can I ask, since you had Reiki while you were pregnant, does your child have any special abilities?
Yes, all my children actually I have 3 children and they are all highly intuitive. My son very much so. An interesting thing about my son, Tyler, when I was into my pregnancy, I had a blood test for Downs and spina bifida, and I came back as high risk. So that's a chromosome abnormalities. So I had to wait until I was about 20 weeks pregnant, so halfway through the pregnancy, to find out that my son wasn't either of these conditions. But he did come out with one different coloured eye and a thing that's called a megadont, was one large tooth at the front. So at some level he must have decided, his soul must have decided, I'm not going to come out as disabled as that. I'm just going to have other issues. But yes, they're all highly intuitive. My son has seen things. My daughter is a medium. My other daughter is a spiritual coach. These things most definitely run in families, but that's through the sensitivity. Sensitive's another word for, if you like, being intuitive or being mediumistic.
So tell us, where do you go from here?
Well, where I went from after that experience, so my 2 daughters were just on the cusp of teens. But let me just tell you this first, because I started to experience miracles not long after. I mean, these little things I'm telling you about are miracles. I didn't realise they were miracles at the time. Miracles to me are something that happens that defines medical, rational, scientific explanation. Things appearing from nowhere and disappearing, and smells and fragrances coming. So as I said, the whole self-love, the lifting of depression was a gradual process. And when my son was 2 months old, approximately 2 months, maybe a little bit older, I was having a really hard time because my mother was seriously grieving. My husband at the time and I were in a crisis, and I probably had postpartum as well. And I'd been sitting on my bed, honestly crying for about 4 days. I could not stop. And I was so desperate. I said, God help me. Someone help me, please. And do you know, the click of a finger, my mood normalised. It was like someone had switched a light on. And I'm like, oh God, I'm normal. Couldn't believe it. I'm like, I feel normal. And I actually got up and made a drink and went through to sit with my family. That was my first miracle healing. And that happened because the spirit, God, the angels, whoever, my guides, came so close to me, blended with my energy, with their high vibrational energy, and my energy could not sustain a state of depression. Wow, that was incredible. And I've seen that happen many, many times now for me and others. So if I take you back to when I was about 10 and I had this idea of what happens when we die, this question that kept going round and round and round in my head. So we're going along in life, and my daughter, who was maybe about 13, 14 by this time, I discovered that she was burning little bits of paper in her room and burning little papers out in the garden. And I'm thinking, oh no, my daughter is so disturbed by the birth of this child, her brother, that she's actually setting fires to things. So I was deeply concerned. So I said to her, look, Lauren, what on earth, what's going on with you? I said, I would need to get you some help. She goes, no, Mum, it's spells. Spells? Are you a witch? I know I was shocked because I was very, very scared of the dark side, which I know there really isn't such a thing. I know the dark side really comes from human thoughts. So I said, you're a witch? Oh no, Lord, you can't be doing that. So anyway, we went to a mediumship demonstration, and there was angel cards there, and my daughter said, can I get a set of angel cards? And I said, no, you're too young. And then of course I bought her them. And then she took them to school, and she was reading for her classmates, and she was reading for her teachers, and she was just a natural. So here's me thinking that I am just supporting her. So we went to various lessons and courses on how to increase your intuitive self, your psychic abilities, mediumship, and we came over to California, to Laguna Beach actually, to study with Doreen Virtue, who's a very well-known angel lady. She's not now. Her thoughts have gone in a different direction. And I was always thinking to myself, I can't do this. I am just here to help my daughter. And this lack of self-love was still really dragging me down, really making me feel like I was useless, hopeless, everything. So because I'm quite a bloody-minded person, quite a stubborn person, I said to myself, I am going to try this. I am going to work with people and see if there's anything with me. Of course there's something with me. There's something. We're all spiritual beings. We can all do this kind of thing. I've discovered that during my journey. So bit by bit, I started working with the angels, with my intuitive abilities and mediumship. And I also wrote a book, and it was called Be Your Own Medium, because I realised that during the course of my work and my travels, that everyone had this in them, as I have just mentioned to you, because we are only spiritual beings having a human existence, and that we're able to easily commune with other spiritual beings that are in the non-physical. So I wrote this book, and then some friends invited me to come and do events with them. So I was very fortunate. I've worked many places in the world with my mediumship and with my angels, and I've taught a lot of people how to do it. And now my focus is really coming on to helping people to create miracles in their life, manifesting miracles, helping people to realise that miracles are an everyday occurrence, but they can be as small as getting a parking space, or as massive as having remission from cancer. So I'm really interested and I really want to push forward with that. And of course, I'm hugely interested in near-death experience. And I've spent time with a lady called Anita Mirjani, who has one of the most amazing near-death experiences when she died. She was in a coma with end-stage cancer, and she actually left her body and met her father and met her best friend, who had both died of cancer. Found out why she got cancer, basically because she hated herself, and then she was basically told by her father, communicated, listen, you have a choice, you can go back or you can come on to the light. And while she was in that place, it's energy or space, I'm not quite sure. Non-physical realms are probably the best way to describe it. She could see what all her loved ones on planet Earth were doing, what the doctors were saying. She could see the life that her and her husband had had together, the past life. She could see what happened if she passed and what happened if she came back to planet Earth. So I spent some time with her, and she did say to me that my experience was very similar to hers. And I've also spent time with Dr. Ibn Alexander. I don't know if you've heard of him. You have. Amazing
For
man,
sure.
neurosurgeon, and skeptic doesn't do it. He was cynical, Tyler, and he operated in many, many people, and they all told him about near-death experiences, which he poo-pooed them all. Nonsense, the dying brain. Of course, then he had the most horrible bacterial meningitis that should have killed him, and he went on a journey to heaven, through heaven. And I don't want to tell you the end of his story, but his book and his story is so amazing that I urge everyone to check it out.
Thought I maybe had it.
You had it. Well, both these
Thought so.
both these NDE survivors are quite prolific on YouTube and other social media now. But one thing that I do notice about people who have NDEs, and including myself, although mine wasn't, I wasn't blue lighted, but that was a choice I had. I could have gone to spirit then, or I could have, proceeded with my life. It was hugely spiritual transformational, and that is a thing that nearly always happens with NDE stories. So really, what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to keep uplifting people, keep bringing hope to them, let them know they're not alone. You can never be alone on planet Earth. If we only knew how much our own soul loved us and how much all these other souls love us too, it would be indescribable. I want to help people find love for themselves and just to feel happy in their lives and try to uplift planet Earth and realise that we're really all the same. And the essence is we are spiritual beings having a human existence. Doesn't matter what your meat coat looks like, that is the essence that we are. And in non-physical, we don't have this. We don't have any of this physical differences. We're all spirits. We're all spirit. Credible.
What do you do when you find yourself straying away from that mindset?
I find myself straying away often, and I have to quickly pull myself back and remind myself, particularly stress. I have a lot happening in my life just now, and I know that stress is a negative thinking is the worst thing you can do. It can really stop you from enjoying your life. It can really bring your vibration down. It can invite dis-ease, lack of ease into your mind and your body. So I've had a situation that has been extremely stressful, but only because I was resisting the change that it brought. So I was reminding myself about this frequently on an hourly basis. I was meditating more. I was watching NDEs, which, by the way, have been scientifically proven to raise your frequency, raise your vibration. I don't think many people realise that yet. And just reminding myself all the time, I'm so blessed. Everything's working out well for me. The universe always surprises and delights me. And then ultimately, I laugh at myself for being so human. But the issue is, Tyler, if we are born with a brain that is kind of hardwired for anxiety, and we come from a family where they're conditioned to be quite negative and to be anxious and depressed, your lineage has gone through things like severe poverty, potato famines, homelessness. We were taking all this along with us to a certain extent. So it always is going to be, I could call it a battle. Sometimes it does feel like a battle, but let's say an extreme contrast between our human self, our human brain, and our spiritual and love self. You know, there is a thought that there is only ego and love. That is the two things. Ego being not, oh, look at me, I'm great. Ego being fear and depression and angst, envy, and love being, yeah, what we're feeling just now, hopefully, Tyler. So that's what I do. It's simple ways. Just constantly remind yourself, be grateful, be thankful, know that everything's working out. It always has done and it always will do.
Your book's not out yet, right?
No, I'm doing a new book. I've actually withdrawn that previous book. I was going to show you, but I don't have it with me here. So the book will hopefully be out by the time this is broadcast. So yes, I'm looking forward to getting that out there. And it basically summarises my experience, what I've learned from it, and what the readers can learn from it too. I'm a simple person. I'm not like woohoo. I'm down to earth and I'm practical. So I write that way as well. So it's an easy read. And people who have read my other book told me they've had all kinds of spiritual experiences while they've been reading it. So I do know that the energy that will come out with it will be, I want to say, immense. But yeah, I guess immense is a great word. The vibration it will carry will be very uplifting. So I'm excited for that. And I have 2 online offerings coming up as well. And one is the Angel Club, where we're going to be really blending with the angels and feeling their beautiful love, their upliftment, their inspiration, their healing, and getting to have like a personal relationship with our angels and our loved ones if they choose to come in, because they're never far away. But angels and loved ones are on a slightly different vibration. You know, if you think, you know, frequency. A human example is if you go into a room in a house or an office and everybody's sitting like this and something's been said and everybody's fuming or frustrated, you can feel that energy right away. It's thick and it's dense and you want to turn and walk back out again, right? But if you come into a room where everybody's smiling, having fun and you're welcomed in, that energy is completely different. Completely different. And it's a little bit like the human and the angelic. Human beings who have passed have a little more denseness to them, shall we say, than the angelic realms. But it's all good. Everything's in love, comes from love, from the non-physical realms.
And the Angel Club comes out on October 1st.
Yeah, that's
right?
coming 1st of October. And maybe we can give your listeners and viewers a little discount on that, Tyler. 10% discount.
Okay.
I'm going to price it where everyone can afford it, because I do believe that we really want to help as many people as we can to feel uplifted and to feel the love. And then I also have another offering come out in the 1st of November, because 1 is a very important number. I know a little bit about numerology. Everything has energy. Numbers have energy. Your name has energy. My name has energy. Colours have energy. Amazing. Everything has energy and energy related to it. And so I've chosen the 1st of October and the 1st of November deliberately because of the ones. And that talks about new beginnings, new starts, rebirth. So that is very, very exciting for myself and those who choose to come on these experiences with me. So the other one is the one that started 1st of November is manifesting miracles. Manifesting miracles. Well, that's the working title. So yeah, that's where we're going to be teaching people just exactly how easy it is to manifest miracles. You wouldn't believe how easy it is. Although I do feel that you've had a number of miracles in your life as well, Tyler. Maybe in more recent times.
For sure.
You don't, yeah? Do you recognise them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And you know what?
I believe I manifested sobriety without trying to. I
Awesome.
manifested change.
Yes. Did you ask for help from God or the angels or the universe? Yeah. Wow. I love that. And was this an overnight cessation of your, whether I don't know if it was drinking or drugs, your habit, let's call it your habit, it was?
An overnight change?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told myself, so like I told myself that on a certain date, something in my life would change.
Yeah,
Sobriety wasn't what the goal was in my mindset, right? But that's
right.
what it ended up being.
Okay. So how could you have gone ahead and do this fantastic job you're doing now if you weren't sober? It would have been incredibly difficult for you. So that's a little bit like the miracle I had where they removed my depression instantly. Some beautiful, lovely beings blended with you and took you above the requirement for alcohol or drugs. And that's a miraculous healing. I've got to tell you this, Tyler. There is a monk very close with you. I don't know if you've ever seen this being before. Do you know there's a monk very close with you in spirit? Okay. And he actually says he's your brother, so you may well also have been a monk in a previous life. And by the way, previous lives are actually all happening at the same time. We call them previous lives, but they're all happening at the same time. And there could be many of us wondering about planet Earth, many parts of our spirit wondering about planet Earth, also having lives, because I do believe we are a little splinter. We're generations and generations all will give a little splinter of energy for a new baby or a new being who comes into Earth, who comes onto planet Earth. So I love that for you, Tyler, and that's just exactly what I want my work to help to be able to do, and I know your work will do it, uplift people to beyond the need for excess food, drink, or any other excess that we have. I have a great story. I quite often ask the angels just because they were an early part of my spiritual education, but also I feel a love and a lightness and a joyfulness with them. And I asked them to help me lose some weight. And then I forgot about it because you can ask them and then forget about it because they get on it. They're 24/7. They're not 9/11, they're 24/7. They never say no. Sometimes the things don't work out exactly as you think they're going to, but they're always going to give you a wonderful result. So I said to Jesus, will you help me lose some weight, please? So I had a habit of going into this particular coffee shop and having a latte, a skinny latte, and a fruit scone with butter and jam, right? This is my daily breakfast habit. So a couple of days after I'd made this request and forgot about it, I went into the coffee shop and the girl said, what would you want? What do you want? And I'm like that. I hesitated for a minute. I said, give me my usual, please. So she brings over the latte and this big delicious fruit scone, except to me it wasn't looking delicious, it was looking like a big stone. So I'm like, I really don't fancy this scone. Okay, let me just put some butter on it. So I halved it and I put some butter on it and I picked it up and I'm looking at it. I just don't feel this. And guess what I did next, Tyler? I put it in my mouth and ate it all the time feeling ill because the angels asked them to put me off this, help me to lose weight. They did a thing, they put me off this particular item of food that was fattening and not good for me. And my human brain decided to override them for no good reason, even though they were giving me very strong indications. Don't eat that. We're trying to help you fulfill your desire. So, yeah, it's very easy we ask for heavenly help, and then it's very easy to sabotage that by being human.
Can I ask you a couple questions I ask everybody?
Sure.
What is your definition of the meaning of life?
The meaning of life, well, to me, it used to be responsibility. And there's so many of us are bowed under it with responsibility. But now I really feel the meaning of life is to enjoy, have fun, laugh, uplift other people, be kind when you can, but also have boundaries. I was walking along to the coffee shop this morning. This lady was with her dog, and the little dog was jumping up at me, and he was waiting for her to throw the ball, and he was wanting a treat. And I said to her, look at your dog. He's intending to enjoy every minute of this day and every minute of every day for the rest of his life. And she says, I need to do that. And I said, exactly, we all need to do that. Just live your best life, be kind, be accepting, and
It's beautiful.
You'll be happily ever after.
If you have one message for the world, what would it be?
Well, of course, peace. I mean, I'm not in a Miss World competition, obviously. Granny competition, perhaps, but not Miss World. But try and just see that we are all, consider that we are all spiritual beings in a human cover, a human meat suit, a human coat. Does it matter the colour? We're all got exactly the same experience, just in different ways. So please, let's bring that to the fore. Instead of celebrating the differences between us, can we please celebrate the similarities, the sameness, compassion.
And where can people find your work?
Well, I'm all over social media. I just type in Jane Dawson and you should see me. I can post links later for that, and I have www.janedawson.co.uk website. This has been an
Awesome.
absolute pleasure, Tyler, speaking with you. You're doing a
I
fabulous
agree.
job.
I had fun. I had fun the other day when we were trying to figure it out also.
That was worthwhile, wasn't it?
It
That was
was
worthwhile spending the
something.
time.
Hey,
Well,
we both learned things, all right?
absolutely. Let's stay in touch and see how else we can support you. I'm very keen to support you in this.
Yeah, come back and after everything and we can do it
Yeah,
again for sure.
absolutely. And maybe I'll have you on sometime to talk about your journey and your podcast.
Hey guys, thanks for joining me on the Light You Are podcast. If you want to support this channel, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you never miss an episode. Also, if you haven't checked out my children's book, The Light You Are, it's available only on Amazon. We're all just trying to remember who we are, the light we are.